can go. Good evening and welcome to the October meeting of the Special Education Advisory Committee. This is our October 10th meeting. The agenda says it's a work session, but it is not. It is a regular meeting. Let's go ahead and introduce the members. Let's start down here.
My name is Chelsea Racy.
Marilyn McCall.
I'm Amy Hunter.
Anna Williams.
Amanda Hazelhurst.
Angie Gunn.
And Ms. Gunn is our consultant to our committee, and the superintendent's representative, and our school board chair just came in, so thank you. We're glad to have you. Glad to have everyone here. Is there a motion to approve the agenda
I motion to approve with the exception
of the work session?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And a motion to approve the September meeting minutes. I have copies here if anyone needs them. Second?
Motion to approve.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Is there any public comment this evening? All right, with no public comment, we will move to our presentation. Ms. Gum. Yeah, I think we'll try to get that that changed a little bit. Can we put it on so that people in the room though can see? Are you following slides?
These slides are really just indications of these 10 indicators, so that's just for the public to see, but the indicators that you have on your presentation is exactly what we're.
We haven't handed the presentation out yet. That's why we're assembling it
I'm
because
trying
it's
to-
printed really, really wonky. It's separate, I think. Is that one done? Thanks, Amanda. You have a copy? I have a copy. Yeah, why don't,
She has one
do you
now.
have a copy? Do you want to send one over to that
Here.
side of the room? Whoop, do you have a copy?
Not yet, but
I'm finding them as quickly as I can.
I know.
I know, thank you. I can't even explain it, because some
It's
of
so
them are two-sided and
pretty.
some of them aren't, and I don't know why. It was all sent as one print job, so. But I think it's gonna make more sense if everyone has it in front of them.
All right, so we can do one of two things. He's going to present it live. Literally, if you have a copy of what he's handed out, the presentation itself is just going to bullet those 10 indicators that we use. So if you have your printout.
We'll have some to hand to
It's
folks in
gonna
just
be
a
the
second.
exact same thing.
That's fine.
Okay. Maybe I have to get a drive, a flash drive, but we'll wait because I don't want to start without him having it where it needs to be live.
Okay.
Do we have access to a printer here in that?
Yeah, I can make it. How many copies do we need?
'Cause I
It's-
think we could, the easiest thing is just gonna be.
Just to do it again.
Just do it over, yeah. It's 3 pages two-sided. And the last page, there's nothing on the last page. Okay. Weird. That is so
Some
weird.
printed where it was, I don't know how it happened, yeah.
All right, so we'll get copies for everyone. At least their number.
Because those are 8, 9, 10. That's just 1, 2. 1, 2.
Yeah, it's so.
So we're missing the back, I think is what happened.
It's 11, there's an 11, 12.
I had through 10, I think is what I had. I just gave Mr. Napolitano.
Does he have the correct stack?
He had through 10,
Oh.
I think.
That's not. Yeah, I have through 10.
I only have 10.
I only have 3, yeah, this set is only 3 pages.
Yeah, it's 2.5 pages.
They should be numbered. It should be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Well, how many indicators are there? 10?
10.
Yeah.
It is 10.
That's what I gave him.
Okay,
Mhm. Yep.
3 pages.
I don't have one.
That's coming.
He's making copies
Oh,
right now,
okay.
so we will,
Let me just be a
we
pain.
will have them.
And let me just clarify that the committee members can ask questions. If there are questions to clarify from members of the audience, please, if you don't understand something that's been said, but it can't be a group conversation. We're an advisory committee, and I've been reminded of that, so.
All right, so hello, everyone, welcome. So sorry for the technology. We're gonna move ahead. Fauquier County Public Schools was tasked with an inclusion plan. I'm gonna give you a little background as I'm new coming in as a director. I've been in Fauquier for a long time, but there were some things that brought about to this, so I'm gonna explain where we are, and then I'm gonna go through what we've done as a division and where we'll be going with this over the next 3 years. So when I came in as the interim special education director, I was contacted by the state and I was asked to, the word was plan, so in my head, plan meant something different than the state did. So when they said, where's your plan, we didn't get your plan, start looking through all the things that I had, and what they meant by plan was a survey that was completed prior to me coming in. But my interpretation of a plan was a plan, right? We're teachers and we have a plan and we go with a plan. So I'm thinking I'm way behind what needs to happen. So I said, can you give me some grace? We're a little short-staffed, but we will get this plan going. And so at the end, after my team worked tirelessly over the summer to create a plan, and we were so excited to send it to the state, they were like, what'd you do that for? So it was a misunderstanding. What they meant by the plan was this survey that was completed, and that had already been done. So we're a little ahead. When I went to the new director's, special education director meeting in August, it was talked about, and one of my mentors, who's been a special education director for a long time, said, did I miss something? And so we started talking. Long story short of it, we created an inclusive practice plan over the summer. We shared it with the state. I was very excited to share it with them. We're gonna move ahead with the trajectory that we're on. So we may be a little ahead of what other divisions are doing, but I think they're all moving in that direction. So that's how it got started. That's how we got a little miscommunication here going, but I think we're in the right place in what we're doing. So I wanna move ahead with what we're actually doing. All right. All right, so the purpose of this inclusive plan, the state gave us a tool to use. So from that tool, the purpose of us using that tool, they were recommending school divisions review the indicators when creating a plan to move towards a more inclusive practice for all students. So that's what we used as our guide, and we went through that tool to create what our plan would look like. And as I just mentioned, there are 10 indicators within the tool that we work through. So just to let everyone know, the implementation is to be released over time as the team reviews the progress from each year through surveys in order to fully implement the program with fidelity, okay? All right. So we're going to go through the plans step by step as what they are, and then what we are highlighting some of the things that we're gonna do under each of those indicators. So the first indicator is a clear vision and vocabulary for inclusive schools. Clearly, if you don't have everyone knowing what that vision is and knowing the vocabulary that brings about, because we can all have different terminology, but if we're all on the same page, then we know the direction we're moving in, right? So our team decided to start first with a survey. So we needed to collect the survey to see what perceptions were within the division of what we already had or what we had been accessing basically prior to COVID. What did inclusive practices look like? I think we were in a direction and then COVID hit and everything just kind of went into mass chaos per se. And now we're trying to get ourselves back on track with that. What does that look like? So we did the survey. We will collect those surveys annually so that we know what we're doing. Once we have the results from those, then we will be sharing those with the schools so that we can move in that direction. So that was the first step to making sure that we know where we are, what people's perceptions are, so we can move forward with what a vision and what the vocabulary words need to mean to everyone. So we will be communicating clear expectations of those inclusive practices to increase opportunities for students with disabilities to be included in the general education classroom throughout the inclusion process. The way to start that is we will be having meetings with building administration, including principals, assistant principals, special education designees, so that we can begin in that process. We also will be moving, the interpretation will be, they will be moving that into their weekly professional learning community, we call them PLC meetings, and begin to share what that vocabulary for inclusive practice looks like amongst their school staff. Okay, so that first step is in effect. We have started to do that. The second indicator that you see up here is legislative and accountability standards. And so we are in the phases of beginning this piece. So Fauquier County Public Schools Special Education Department will begin to collect data from schools by means of their administration. We need to be looking at where are we going. So provide guidance for building administrators to determine the percentage of students who receive special education services and compared to state averages. There are indicators through the state that we either meet or do not meet. And so that's an important part to start. What does that look like? What direction do we need to go in? So looking at our data and sharing the data with our administrators so we know where we are. Those are the people that are sitting in the IEP meetings and having those conversations. Okay? So as I said, we are phasing that part in at current times.
Can I ask a question about this indicator too? Is
Uh-huh.
this covering all of the indicators in the plan, in the state plan, like disparity, the disparity piece, or is it just this piece?
The biggest part of the indicators in the state that this is covering is indicator 5, and it's talking about, there's a couple of bullets in that, and one of the bullets is how much are the students spending in the general education classroom. There's a quota to meet there, and then how much are they in the special education class. That number is much lower, and so there's quotas to meet there. So indicator 5 on the state reporting is the primary one to be looking at for that one.
And then what's the indicator on disparities, like race disparities? That's a different
That's a
indicator.
different one. There are 14 indicators with this.
Okay, so those are the two that you're mostly looking at here. Okay, thanks.
All right, so indicator 3 is a strong tier 1 instruction. And so that's the primary piece. Some schools are doing a really good job with this. Some are still, we're moving in that direction. We have a tier 1 committee that consists of several people across the division in gaining support that there's a process to follow, and so we're building that capacity within our school division. So that was the first step. That's the initial piece of where we start. So Fauquier County Public Schools will, and talking about response to intervention, our RTI, and then the other big piece that was a push this year that has a lot of people trying to figure things out is our Virginia Literacy Act. And with that, it came great standards and requirements by the state with little wiggle room whatsoever to make exceptions, which also included the curriculum that we were allowed to use. Our division moved quickly with that, and we have trained and have begun implementation of the program that we're using. And so that also spans over to our special education to make sure that we have the same for those students who are in the pull-out, or whether they're in a co-teaching classroom, that everyone has the tools that they need to move forward with that. And then third piece of that, of what we're doing is, as many of you may know, the Virginia Alternative Assessment tool, VAP tool, immensely changed. It's very robust at this that you have a rubric for, and you have to have your data and your eligibility and all these pieces. You have to have the whole team there to go through it. It's taking a really long time, but they have to be done annually, and so we cannot move forward with having an IEP without this tool being done. And so we have all these things that are moving forward this year. So it's causing some change, and with change causes, some nervousness about moving forward, but together we'll move forward and we'll figure this out. So we might as well add one more thing to it, right? Might as well do it all at one time. All right.
Can I ask just a clarification question as well? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
When you're speaking of the VLA or the Virginia Literacy Act, is that the program for the whole school, or is that when they fail if they're below standards, is that when they're kicked into that tutoring type program?
So the VALS is the regulations that the state has pushed out to all divisions. The VALS is an assessment at the elementary level that they use that gives us data to know what stage the children need to be in.
Okay.
And then HMH is a reading program that was selected based on the state list that we purchased. So all these things are going hand in hand, and they all come from the regulations of what the state has pushed out in this Virginia Literacy Act.
The Virginia
Which is the
Literacy Act is the
curriculum.
law
Yeah,
that
that's the
covers
law.
all of it.
But the act, is the
Yes.
law
Yes.
that covered,
Right.
okay.
The VAP is a
Thank
separate,
you.
the
Yes.
VAP is
And
a
it was-
No, I
separate
know
piece,
the
yeah.
VAP, but the vows is what I was,
The
The
VALS
VALS
is the
is
old
the assessment.
pals.
Yes.
the vows is the old pals, but that is what will link you into the the tutoring
Everyone
program.
Right, everyone gets HMH. That
HMH is the curriculum.
program that we're using for
Tier
everyone.
one.
Oh, okay.
Within that program, it has the tools and the interventions that need to be used, and the data we use to determine who needs that is based on the VALS assessment.
Okay.
Got it?
And that's tier 2. The tier 2
If
interventions.
there's any
Is there
intervention that
wiggle
needs to
room
happen.
in that if someone may have tested inappropriately and they say, oh, they just don't take tests well? Would there be a state, is this too far?
We can talk later about it, okay?
Okay.
Well, and we actually have an update on Virginia Literacy Act. We have a whole evening scheduled on
Great.
that later.
Yeah, we
Thank
can
you
talk
very
about
much
that,
for
okay?
taking
Sure,
a break
That's
from
all
me.
right.
But
All
is
right.
is this tier one only elementary, like that's like?
Right now, the
is that
Virginia
what-
Literacy Act goes through elementary school. The next year, the expectation is it will go to middle school.
Okay.
Okay, but that's how it was pushed out. So get to practice at elementary and then be an expert by the time middle school rolls around, right? That's the goal. All right, so our fourth indicator is student-centered decisions, staffing, and scheduling. And so Fauquier County Public Schools will provide updated training and during our monthly meetings. So my supervisors meet monthly or more than once a month if there's a new assistant principal, but they're meeting with assistant principals to go through some of these things, make sure we know where we are, make sure the vocabulary, make sure they understand the process, so that we can begin to move in that direction. So there's a lot of background work that has to happen before we can get into the heavy stages of how it really needs to be pushed forward. So we have to spend our time making sure we have all these pieces so that it's pushed in an accurate way and everyone has the same information. Okay?
Are the forms referenced in here made yet, or?
Yes, everything is made. We have a very large document that we are using within our schools, and we're pushing it out in the small sections as we go, but the inclusive plan itself is inclusive. Everything is completed. We did all of it over the summer.
Okay, and is that available to the Seac as well?
And not at this time because we have not pushed it out to our school staff, and so I'm not.
But it has been submitted, the entire,
It is not required to be submitted to the.
I
state.
understand,
I did.
but it was submitted.
I
The-
did,
But the
yes.
entire plan was submitted.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. I guess you could call us overachievers, right? Not that we knew we were. All right, indicator 5 is effective use of resources. We have not got to this phase to push out, but what it is, Fauquier County Public School Special Education Department will provide resources, trainings to building administrators for, and in here it's paraprofessionals, instructional assistants is what we are on the terminology, collaborative planning for teachers and the paraprofessionals. So it's pushing all those resources and trainings out. We have to be careful and diligent with doing that so that we have everyone doing the same pieces, and so that will go out in phases as we do that. Okay? Indicator 6 is collaboration. Again, we're not quite at this stage yet, but Fauquier County Public Schools Special Education Department will provide resources, training modules for building administrators to use within their abilities to build the collaborative co-teaching. that's really the piece, is to have those co-teachers. And like I said, prior to COVID, I believe we were moving in that direction. We had some really good, firm co-teaching units that had been happening for a while. And then, things fell apart and we weren't able to do that as we went through COVID. So now we've got to pick those pieces up, get us back to where we were, and implement it even further and in more locations, so we actually have this co-teaching model doing. And there's wonderful training modules that were supplied by the state. I was given books that can be shared and highlighted and implemented when I was at the directors conference in August. And so we were very excited that one of those books was actually the models that we had put into our plan. So we feel like we're right on target with what we need to be doing. All right, indicator 7. Talked about specialized support. Again, we're not right at that stage yet, but Fauquier County Public Schools Special Education Department will be providing training on use of prior use to annual IEP meetings within their buildings. So remember, anytime you're changing your services, your least restrictive environment, that doesn't come from us, that comes from the IEP team itself. So in order to have those conversations in those meetings where those decisions are made, we have to make sure that the people that are in those meetings are trained and understand and know the key points and know the discussion points in order to look towards the more inclusive practices. Some parents are very up and know what that looks like, some are not, so it's our job to make sure that everyone, including the parents that are at the table, understand these things and understand what that least restrictive could look like, what those inclusive practices could entail, so that we can have that. So the trainings for our staff will be very important so that we are all on that page and can all have those IEP meetings that have that information.
What are you thinking in terms of parent training for that piece?
I think the biggest part is just to have them aware prior going in, exposure to this, and then that our staff within the buildings are having those conversations so that the parents understand what that looks like. Number 8 is our social inclusion. This is an exciting piece. This happened a while back. We are certainly moving forward with it. But Fauquier Public Schools Special Education Department will continue. And one of the biggest things that we've done in our division, we have had Special Olympics in this division for as long as I've been here. But the new piece has started with the unified sports programs. It started at one school, and it was going quite well. And then the next high school was like, well, what are they doing? I want to do that. And then the next, and so then it just starts the trickle-down effect, right? People are seeing, people out of our office have been to those games. It is phenomenal to watch just how they actually go with your gen ed, knowing what their roles are to support those special ed. The game that I watched was a basketball game, and that's the most heartwarming thing to ever see, is to know that you see that collaboration. So even at this year, some of that is trickling down into middle schools. Some of it can be sports, some of it can be clubs, but our division has really embraced, and people are really enjoying to see that piece and see the collaboration that happens between our typical students and our students with disabilities. So very excited. We'll continue to move that and to create some of that and see what that trickle-down effect, how far down it can go. Okay? All right. 9.
Did you have a question, Marilyn? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question? 9 is indicator 9 is family engagement. We are currently implementing this as we speak. So Fauquier County Public Schools Special Education Department will present inclusive practices at the Seac, which we're doing. It goes to the school board for presentation next week. And so that's another way of getting that out, making sure our families have it. You guys can share it. Well, they'll be at the school board meeting, and then making sure our people are trained to know how to make sure parents receive this information and that they're part of that team so that we can move in that direction. All right. Number 10, which is our last one, indicators sustaining inclusive practices. So once we get established with this, as I said, the implementation is going to take a while. If we try to just drop in, we're not gonna have the fidelity that we need. So what we need on the backside is this sustainability. How are we going to continue that? So continuing with the conversations, with the surveys, with the data collections, so that we continue to build on the information that we see. Maybe we're really strong in one area, but we haven't quite moved where we need to be. So those surveys will help us so that we know over the summer, each year out of our office, okay, we're here with this, but we're not here at this piece. What do we need to do? What's the next level to build up up to that, so that we can continue to stage this. We do not want this to be a couple of years in and we're like, well, we need it to continue to grow. This is the trajectory of education, and we need to make sure that we're pushing out as leaders to do such a thing. If we've already made our plan, then we plan to just keep moving forward with it.
So are these,
Go ahead.
I apologize.
No, go ahead.
Are these surveys just for staff members and how it's working for
It
them?
would be for staff, so we would start out with buildings and administrators and things, and then we'll move in, as we begin the co-teaching, we'll move that into the teachers and the instructional assistants with the surveys to make sure of where they are and where we're going with things.
Are they conducted annually?
They will be, yes, ma'am. We had our first one, we began this before we wrote the plan, we had our survey from the administrators, so we knew where we needed to start. Did we need to start at ground zero, or are we already further than what we thought we were? And so that survey was able to get us indications of what we needed to know where we were gonna go with things.
And the survey that you mentioned, that was done previously, that, you basically, you already finished what the requirement was that information,
Mr.
used?
Corpening reported that information to us
Well,
like
and
2 years ago.
Right, right, and was that utilized in this process, or?
Yes, we had access to that, and I think that was, the trajectory many divisions were going in. Instead of actually writing a plan, as I define a plan, their plans were embedded in their school improvement
Right.
plans across their divisions. And so the survey was conducted by that after he had had interviews and conversations with building administrators. But, we took
Well,
the plan to be something different, so
And just, by way of history, I know that the legislation was about schools developing their own, looking for which of these indicators they could, were the low-hanging fruit for their school. But I know that there were he had sort of bullet points at the district level that he was talking about doing so.
But-
I'm
but I
very
believe
pleased
with
that
the-
this is much more
But
comprehensive.
that's what I believe, with this being much more comprehensive, and if we're gonna serve as a division and not an isolated school by school, we can have fidelity and consistency by moving with a plan that we're implementing out of our office. That way, we're gathering the information, and we know where the struggles may be or where they're excelling, and how do we utilize those to make sure we're all moving in the plan together as Fauquier County, not just as a particular
Right, more
school.
top-down than
Yeah.
bottom-up.
So some questions were given to me prior. There's a couple that I wanted to answer. Some of the questions, to be honest, I can't answer because we're in such early stages. As we move through this, I have no problem with answering those. But some of these I just wanted to put out there. We may have already really shared it here, but I'm just gonna put them out there. So one of the things was asked was, what is the definition of inclusion? So my definition of inclusion is instructional and behavioral strategies that are used to create an environment where all students can learn and participate. The goal of inclusive practices is to improve academic and social and emotional outcomes for all students, regardless of their disability, and this is not always synonymous of placing a student in a general education classroom. Inclusive practices are not just for academic classrooms. These practices are across the school day that also include reverse inclusion per se, such as our unified sports at the high schools, and then as we were speaking, maybe some sports clubs and other clubs at the middle school level. Models of inclusion can be unique per the student, so I don't think that you can just say these are the models that we're using. They need to be unique to the student and the opportunities at each school. Most of this is driven by the IEP team meetings for each of those students, so we need to be creative in those meetings because each child is different and their opportunities and their skill sets and their interests are very different. So what does it work for that child? It can't be a uniform, well, this is what we have. It has to be, what does it work for all? And then the last statement, all students having access to the general education classroom is a discussion at the IEP meeting, as the team is required to determine least restrictive environment for each student, and this does not always equate to a general education classroom. Some parents are very much pushing towards that, and some parents are not. That is not what they're looking for. So we cannot go in with a mindset that this is what we're gonna make it look like. It is up to us to educate the parents and our staff to know what the questions and the conversations need to be in those IEP meetings, and when we get to the least restrictive environment, what does that look like for that child? So I think that's where we are.
I would just on that, because I do completely agree, and I think the last thing we want to suggest is that we just do away with the continuum of placements, because
Absolutely.
that
That's
doesn't,
not
that
going against the
flies in
law,
the
but
face
yeah.
of IDEA just as much as segregating everybody does.
Absolutely.
That said, I do think that it is very important, especially when you're talking about like a kindergarten student who maybe has been in preschool, where our preschools are kind of spread around the county, that the first placement considered should always be the least restrictive environment, and that should at least be a conversation.
Well, when you're looking at, when you're in the IEP and you're looking at least restrictive, there's a whole list. The very first one starts with their base school in a gen ed classroom. So the
That's where
team
you
looks
start.
at, is that considered? Is that what the child will access their education from? If the answer is no to that, then you start down through that
Correct.
continuum that ends all the way down to, can be homebound and things like that. But
Right.
yes, every
My
IEP
my-
meeting needs to be considering.
My concern is that I would like to, my proposal or my position would be that because that's where you start, that every student should start with an IEP meeting at their base school.
Well, I can't make that decision, that's a parent decision. with
Well,
an
no,
IEP
but
meeting,
I'm-
so the conversation begins there, but it doesn't mean that's where it stays.
No, I understand that, but I know there are students who have never been inside their base school.
And there may be a reason for it, again, it's IEP team decision, but yes.
But the question is, why is the IEP, for a kindergartner, why would the IEP team not be the team at the base school where
Shouldn't they
that
meet
student?
time?
If that's the first thing that's going to be considered, why wouldn't that team,
Automatically be.
They're
Right.
going to be the team at the table.
but they're
for
not,
preschool.
they're not always. Because,
That's a
because.
bigger discussion, I'm not.
Okay,
gonna-
okay, but I think it's certainly not something that's gonna get resolved tonight. But the point is, if their base school is a school that doesn't have a preschool, they absolutely won't have a team that has people from their base school, and I think a lot of,
I'm a preschool supervisor, and that's not quite in the direction that we've been going in, so.
okay, but I think that's a conversation that I think is an issue.
The bigger point
that
is that it's
should go on
critical,
the-
obviously, to widen the horizon as early as possible, and because it's only gonna narrow. I mean, no
Right.
matter what you do, it's gonna narrow, so if,
So I'm just saying,
presenting
like, in terms of
parents with-
considerations,
I would
that
like
be.
to add that as a parent, I feel oftentimes that the team likes to kind of impose a decision and isn't always as willing to be challenged on that decision if a parent does want more.
I think this will go a long way
I'm not gonna.
to addressing.
I'm not
Well,
gonna
no,
say-
I'm just saying, like, I think
I'm just-
having a central approach to this, I think is
Absolutely.
definitely the.
Absolutely. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, reports. Here we go. That's me. All right, October, this is the month we're in, October is Disability History Awareness Month, and it is also Disability Employment Awareness Month. I was thinking about this tonight, and I wanted to talk a little bit about disability history, and then I remembered that about a year ago, I gave a presentation to the ARC on this subject. So if it's okay with the committee, I would like to bring some of that information with me to the next meeting, even though it will be November, and share that, and then send the presentation out after that meeting, because I think it talked about why inclusion, from a historical standpoint, why inclusion of people students with severe intellectual or developmental disabilities is particularly important in light of the history. So I'll plan to do that at our next meeting. The restraint and seclusion numbers, we have those for this year. Thank you, Mr. Napolitano. I will pass these out. These are just printed from the website. They've been up for a few weeks. And if you want to pass those down. This is kind of an outlier issue because it is not technically a special education issue. So it doesn't fall under Ms. Gum's department, but it does fall under the Seac's purview because it's an issue that historically, the vast majority of restraints and seclusions impact students with disabilities. So,
Do Do you have more?
Are there more
We're
down
good.
there?
Oh, we're
I
good.
think we're good.
Okay. And like I said, it's, if you Google Fauquier restraint and seclusion 2023-24, you will go right to this page. I have heard from more than one parent who expressed concern that perhaps these numbers aren't as accurate as they could be, but I know that this is all reported from the schools based on specific incident reports. I guess one of the questions I have, and it certainly doesn't need to be answered tonight, but is there a way to, especially when you're surveying staff, to kind of independently verify, if you ask the question, have you been involved in a restraint, in the past year, if those numbers aren't matching up, that would be kind of a red flag internally. I'm just wondering if there's a difference in what threshold administrators or staff are using in this. So I'm just gonna put that out there, because I have heard that from more than one parent.
Is it subjective data? I mean, is there an
It's-
ability for it to be a subjective?
It should not be
The
subjective.
schools report it themselves. But I don't know how someone would know whether it was, you'd have to know,
Well,
I guess
just,
you'd have to know like all 7, and then, do you know what I mean?
right, but these are cases where, like,
How would you know that it wasn't,
these are
I guess?
cases where, like,
That's-
parents have talked to other parents in the school, and their numbers are adding up to more than totals that they're seeing, so.
I mean, no one's brought that to my attention, so. I
Okay,
mean,
I'm
there be
just
a
mentioning it
review?
because it's not like,
But if there
these
were
were,
like, if there were several parents at one school that had that concern, then that's something they should bring to the administrator to myself, and then I could address that, but
Okay.
I haven't,
and
I
that
haven't heard.
was, and that would be my response, but I just wanna kind of put that out there.
I mean, is there a paper trail, like
Oh, yeah.
you said, like,
Should
I'm
be.
assuming there is.
Okay.
So,
I mean-
so what we're saying is in the system, there's only been this number reported.
So, yeah, so the question is,
So
have there
are
been
there
any
things
restraints that
happening
just
that
didn't,
aren't getting
Didn't get reported.
people didn't think they needed to report because, for some reason, or, so I think in some
Forgot to
respect, it
file the
may be,
paperwork.
well, it's also a training issue, like making sure that anybody who interacts with a student understands what constitutes a restraint
Right.
and what they need to do as far as reporting it, which I assume that's part of the process.
Now, we have, there's been an incident or two where a restraint has occurred and it wasn't reported, but when we found out it was, then it was addressed.
Well,
and
then
it
that
was-
would
and then it
indicate
put
that
up.
there's probably more hidden.
Well, and I don't I'm not even
Well, I
suggesting
don't
that
know
it
if I
was,
used the word hidden.
yeah,
I mean,
I'm
no,
not
I
even,
didn't mean
right.
hidden in that way.
It's possible that there are more that are unreported.
I
I think it's more,
apologize.
it
I
would be
did not
more
mean
of
it.
an education issue, like, oh, I didn't realize,
Right, right.
that,
I'm just-
or I didn't
Yeah,
realize
right.
that was in a restraint, because the threshold
It-
is
yeah.
pretty high. I mean, it's not like you threw somebody to the ground, it's, you held on to them and didn't
Right,
let them
kept
go.
them from walking.
So,
Well, and that could be part of it as well, is that the parents may think it's a restraint, but it's not. So like me
Right,
guiding
right.
Dean out the
Oh,
door is
no,
not
and
a
I'm-
restraint. So that's what I mean, so there is a threshold, and that's.
but
what
I'm
the
saying
schools
also
make
like
that
an aide not thinking that what they're doing is a restraint when it actually is. So, what is the training for, like,
The handle with care training we do.
How
and who all,
frequently,
but who all is that done? Is that done with any aides that work in the classrooms as well?
Yes,
Okay.
and how frequently are they trained on it?
yearly.
And is that just people who work with kids with an autism?
Not necessarily, no.
Who gets that training?
It could be anyone in the building, so it could be a teacher, it could be.
So we have some of our crisis team.
Administrators, the crisis
Okay.
team, it just depends.
And you have a yearly
Varies
refresher,
building to
too.
building.
So-
About how many people in the building are trained?
It varies building to building,
Like, say, an elementary school on average?
I don't know, 3 or 4.
Okay.
We typically had 4 or 5. I think we have
So one of
3
those people gets
people
called if there's,
currently trained. We're having a training, I can just speak for the couple schools I know are being trained on the 14th. We have a teacher workday.
okay.
So in our building, we have 4 people having a refresher at that time, and I think 4 additional people being trained for the first time. So I
Okay.
think it just depends
Is
on
there
how-
any training that's done for people who don't get the handle with care that basically says, this is what you can't do? So if you're an aide and you aren't on the list of people who get handle with care, do you get any kind of training about this is a restraint and you're not allowed to do it?
I think that varies school to school. I mean, we don't give any specific training on what you can and can't do in terms of what is or what isn't a restraint.
I guess that would be the concern, that somebody who doesn't have any training does something that constitutes a I mean, we had like one really egregious situation, and the school district, responded correctly, which was to call the police, but, for those things that really, like you might do that with your own kid at home, you wouldn't do it with a kid in the
I mean,
school.
What about bus drivers?
There's a certain level of professionalism that I think that we also have to expect when we hire people, that they're, not gonna physically put their hands on a student
other
that's
reasons.
inappropriately, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
I
mean,
think
I
there's
hope so,
a
too.
certain level of that that is expected when you're hired to work in the school system, just like you have other.
I agree.
So, we have to take that into
But I think it gets complicated when you have kids who are, say, nonverbal or have, really high support needs and,
Or maybe in the fits and throes of something that's very emotional and then.
right. So, okay, anyway, that's out there. If people have more questions, we can certainly present those later. I just wanted to take a second to talk about, this should have probably come first, but just wanted to thank you and your supervisors, because I know that you were working on this plan while you were building the plane while you were flying it. I mean, it was an empty office, and as people were sitting in seats, they began working on this. Honestly, I think hopefully that was sort of built a culture around what you hope to do. I'm excited about this.
We've done a lot of team building, collaboration, and just understanding our strengths.
This is big idea stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I've sat here for many years
Making
at this
some changes in our office.
table going, wouldn't it be nice if we did? And pretty much all these things are here somewhere. So I just want to congratulate you on that. I do want to point out that we sort of dedicated this year to inclusive practices. So we have an assistive technology presentation coming up next month. We're going to be talking about paraprofessionals. We're going to be talking about inclusion of students with significant cognitive disabilities, including issues related to the alternate assessment. I'll just digress for a second. I sent an email to a TTAC person that I've worked with to ask a question if there are new crosswalks from the VSOLs to the SOLs for the new literacy act. And I got don't know, call you back, I'll get back to you. And the answer to that is there are no new VSOLs. So the VSOLs do not align at this time with the general curriculum, which is a really interesting situation. I asked her if she knew the time frame, and she doesn't. So it's good that there's tier 1 instruction happening for everybody. And then we're also looking at co-teaching models, which obviously is a big model for inclusion. This is the first time that I can think of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Fauquier's taken a comprehensive approach to this issue in any way. And so I really just want to recognize that, because, when we talk about little pieces of this and things that we might want to see differently, or like the issue that I just raised with base schools, all of these are little pieces compared to the fact that we have this big plan that we're going to be working on. And I just want everybody to stay focused on that, and especially anybody who goes to watch this video, that there's never a sense that the Seac opposes the inclusive plan as a plan in any way. That doesn't mean we're not going to take issues with, specific things or specific practices, but overall, I think this is just a huge step in the right direction. That's my personal feeling, so if anyone disagrees, they can become chair. You're going, I'm just kidding. But we can talk about that.
I think it's refreshing to have it come from the county level down, because I think in the past, and there has been work done at the county level. I was part of that about 15 years ago, I think, so.
14, my first year.
14, there we go. And you see where that ended up. So I'm excited to see, and I think that was more of a, like, how can we build up things versus, like, establish the way we want it to be. So I think this plan, clearly, from what I know so far, it goes a long way to get that rolling, and is what is needed. More of a revolution than an evolution, maybe. So I'm excited.
And the world is changing too, a lot. And there are a lot more resources, so. And I guess the overarching feedback that I would have is that I think family engagement is super important. I don't see a lot of parent input into this, and I totally understand how that evolved over the summer. But I also, as chair of the Seac, just want to point out that for development of plans like this, that's not really a family engagement thing. That's really like a statutory responsibility of the Seac. So I would hope that we can figure out a good way, sort of maybe in each of our meetings, to tackle little pieces of this and give you input that could be valuable. But to do it in a way that is collaborative and is, tried to lift all boats. Because I feel really good about the relationship that we have with the Special Education Office, and I don't think any of this works. Inclusion is hard, and it doesn't work unless you have parents and teachers and staff and administrators and everybody all pushing in the same direction. And making big change like this is hard.
And willing
So-
to, I think also willing to take a look at yourselves and what you can do better. It's a very difficult thing to do, and it's very admirable that
So.
you're looking to make those changes, even when you run into those walls that are difficult, trying to find ways to go.
And I think that piece of communicating with parents and helping parents understand the value of this is something where the Seac can help, and that is also part of our charge. So I would just put that out there. That's really it for that. Next month's speaker is Jennifer Rockefeller. She's an occupational therapist who coordinates assistive technology in Buckyear. So send your questions, because I think did that help you to have some questions ahead of time? So if you can email your questions, and I'm especially interested in how the assistive technology can be used to promote inclusion. But I'm sure you're welcome to ask any questions related to assistive technology. In a minute, I'm going to give a report on the state Seac, but we'll go ahead. Do you have anything else to report? Anything else going on in your?
I don't think so. We're just moving, trying to get ourselves stabilized for the school year. There's been a lot of change. Teachers have had a lot of things on their plate that they've had to work through. So just being patient and listening and just, knowing that we're there with them as we move through. That's really where we are at October for the school year.
Thank you. All right. And the PRC.
We have our first webinar this month. November 13th, we'll have Mr. Bellinger on for guardianship and power of attorney. I met yesterday with Ms. Stribling and Ms. Henderson. They'll be doing something from Foreign Families Forward concerning kinship family resources. And then I met also yesterday with VCU and DARS, and they're going to do a partnership for success, a collaborative approach to transition services sometime in April.
Great.
And then our fair in February.
Awesome.
You met with DARS for transition services, and what was the part of that?
Partnership for success.
Partnership for success.
About transition services.
The fair this year is going to be Naga.
Liberty High School.
Mr. Napolitano, do you have anything that you want to?
No, I think that was covered everything.
Do you have anything that you want to add? Okay. Also, I wanted to thank Victoria, because it was a lot of work to get the Seac website back to where it needed to be. And I sent her pages and pages of things that needed to happen, and like that afternoon, I was like, it's all done, go take a look. So that was very exciting for me. So I appreciate your help on all that. Let's see, state Seac. We spent most of our time in subcommittees. I chair the policy subcommittee. Our biggest issue for the foreseeable future is dispute resolution at the state level. But there is a big process happening that is much, much bigger than the state Seac. The Commission on Youth through the legislature is working on looking, top to bottom at the entire process. And so we're kind of waiting. At this point, it would be premature to do anything as a state Seac. What else did we do? We spent a lot of time talking with and about DARS. And one of our presentations was, we'd asked DARS to come and talk about how they're addressing behavioral barriers to education, or behavioral barriers to workplace education, to placements and things like that, to involvement with DARS. And they talked a little bit about that. They also talked about just all of the DARS services. And I was really unaware just how many opportunities there are through DARS. And I think just making sure that those folks writing those transition plans in the school, know that what's available. One of the big points that they made, Rusty Edens from Wilson Workforce was talking, but the big point was nobody's not disabled enough for a robust transition plan, and that they were saying basically their hope would be that all students would be referred to DARS because they can help with support transition to college and do a lot of things that I was unaware that they did. So anytime you can get somebody else to do the work and add value, I'm all about that. So that was an interesting presentation. And then Dr. Zania Burnett spoke about, she's the person in charge of instruction in the special ed office. She's the number 2 in special ed at VDOE, talked about paraeducators, which was fantastic. And one of the things she said was that they have joined the Cedar Center. Have you talked about this with your cohort? It's really exciting. I've been reading Cedar stuff for a long time, so I'm thrilled to see that Virginia is a part of it.
What is the
Cedar Center is now, they're in Colorado, and they do inclusive practices stuff, and especially when it comes to paraprofessionals. And then there's another group that is just dedicated to professional development. But as part of all that, Virginia is offering free training to all paraeducators in the state, and Dr. Barnett budgeted for 5,000, and she got 300 last year. And I'm sure I'm sure that the biggest impediment is that most of them are paid hourly, and that would require them to spend a lot of time because it's a year-long training. So that's just something that hopefully we can talk about. I've already talked about my feelings on paraeducators, and this is their 3rd year of that, but hopefully by next year we could have paras involved in that. Do we have anybody in the cohort? No? Okay. And then we're going to talk more about, I'll talk more about that in December when we talk about this issue at our meeting in December. And I think that's it. All right, old business, the proposed inclusion awards and recognition. Megan was going to talk to us about that tonight, but she is not here, so we will move that to next month. Updated Seac brochure. This is why everything printed so wonky, because I did this and then it messed up everything else. I don't know if, this is for approval tonight, so I need everybody to kind of look through it. Let me pass
Do you
it.
want everyone to take one?
Yeah,
Just
as
to
many
see
as
if there's
we,
any
I don't know if there are enough for everybody.
Are you looking for errors?
We're looking for errors. The only things that were changed were, if you can share, when I send out the minutes, I'll send out a copy of the.
I was only asking
final
if
motion.
you guys didn't approve it yet. I just didn't know if you wanted everyone to have it, that's all.
Well, I'll tell you what, if they hate it, then I'm gonna come around and collect them. The only controversial part is that we changed the wording on the front because we realized it was wording that had been used for many, many, many years, and we've evolved.
You didn't,
Oh, didn't I?
no. You
After
told
all
me-
that?
No, you told me you were printing this one and you were gonna get approval on the wording.
I did, and then I thought I'd printed the new one. Okay, and Marilyn McComb is going to read the new wording to us because I don't have it in front of me. So this would be to replace this wording. See, all right, you already have to give them back at the end. Our old wording was promoting access for students with disabilities to a public education that cultivates unique abilities and maximizes potentials. And my feeling was, hopefully we've gotten past access, so.
I'm hoping this is the right one. I'm just gonna say it. So advising FCPS to ensure that all students with disabilities are educated in the least restrictive environment with challenging objectives and the individualized instruction, supports, and services required to address their needs and achieve their unique goals.
And I think I'll have.
Is it fit on here?
Oh, yeah, because we're going to make it smaller font. It actually does fit because Marilyn is reading it off of
I'm reading it
the
off.
actual brochure that I thought
We did have to
we
make
had.
the font one size smaller.
Anyway, I think that does a better job explaining of what the role of the Seac is, kind of in a nutshell, because we promote access, well, I guess the access thing, but our job is to provide advice to the school division, and then they do with it what they will do with it. And I think it's important that that's clear. Drop that brochure in the trash on your way out. We don't,
took it back.
it's embargoed.
Printed beautifully though.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. We did not change what is the Seac. We did not change functions of the Seac. We did not change the state Seac. I'm still the Region 4 person. We did change the dates. They're 2024, 25 dates.
I updated the QR code because it was no longer valid.
It was a no, see, thank you. I would not have even, yeah, that's why I don't. If it involves Canva, Marilyn is usually the one who gets the phone call. Okay, the live stream, did you update the live stream link too? Or is that the same, still the same?
That's the same.
Okay, and then the members, everybody check the spelling of your name. And if your friend's not here, check the spelling of your friends' names. I think this is right. All right.
So we'll update.
We still welcome input. And we still take comments by mail or in person. So,
Oh,
what?
are we going to keep Katie on there?
Oh,
Do you wanna
so,
share the
yeah,
back-
I'll share this.
Oh, I apologize.
Katie, no, that's all right. Katie Jefferson contacted me to tell me that she's not sure if she'll be able to stay on the Seac because she has a work conflict that she probably isn't going to be able to work around. And my suggestion to her was to go ahead and resign for the year, and then hopefully by next year there won't be a conflict, or who knows, we may have a different schedule. I have not heard back from her on that, so I don't want to take her off the list. So I think we can just go ahead and go with brochures. If she does resign before that's done, then I'll take her name off, but otherwise, I don't think it's a crisis. She was approved by the school board, so.
As far as distributing these brochures, do we have any-
Well, I guess the first question is there a motion to approve the updated version with the slight correction on the cover that Marilyn read? Is there a motion?
I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Aye. Okay, now, Mr. Napolitano, could your office print these in color for us?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Now the distribution question.
Right.
So I surreptitiously stuck some of them in school offices when I walked in, but, I mean, they were around. We'll make sure they'll be in this office. Oh, that reminds me, can we link on the PRC page, can we link to the Seac page, and then we'll link to the PRC page?
Sure.
Like with a little note of like, if you have a question, if you want to have input on policy, come here, and if you need information, go there. So getting those out to you so that you have them at anything that you're at. We did want to hopefully get them out to people in IEP meetings, or maybe at the beginning, like new people in the process. Certainly don't need to be handing them out at every single IEP meeting. But is there something that goes to like new families with, like, when a student is first identified, do they get some kind of packet or anything? Okay.
Having
Laying
them
on the
available
table in
on
I mean, some conference rooms, I mean, we have,
Yeah, or at least just getting them out to all the schools so that the special ed department has them.
and
Be good.
linking them on the website. So that
Yeah,
someone can
and
download.
probably the same, this is on our
That is already-
website.
Oh, okay.
If it's not, it will be once,
Well, then
we may not have put it back up until we had the final one, but it'll go up.
Could someone just send
Yeah.
that to Kathy Webb? I'll let her know. I'll
She'll
tell
be
her.
so excited.
Okay.
We're back.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I folded them last time. She doesn't need to fold them. If she'll print them, that is more than enough. It's also easier to deal with them when they're not folded, like just fold as many as you need at a time. But for whatever ones you all can distribute, just go ahead and get them out there. And I will also get them out to members of the committee so that you can hand them out as well. Policy discussion. So the way we talked about this working was if we had any discussion we wanted to have about proposals for what the presenter was talking about, this would be the place where we talk about if we felt like we wanted to take any action. So I guess I want to just open up a discussion about sort of, is there any overarching input that that anyone would like to share at this point, Ms. Gum, or anything that you feel we need to do more formally. So let me just put that out there.
I mean, specifically on what she presented tonight?
Yeah, I think big picture, as opposed to getting into all of the indicators, I think we can kind of tackle those as we go through, but maybe in the first couple of indicators and then just the overall plan. I mean, I spoke to it, but does anyone else want to?
I think for me, it's just gonna take a little time, right, to see like the rollout, right, and what
Well, that's what I was
comes as
agree.
a, I mean, so is it still, like, we're still, like, waiting to get the information, right, and how that looks, so.
Yeah. The only thing that's, when I read it before and when I was kind of thinking about my questions, that kind of popped into my head, is I know it's not necessarily related, but it makes me think of, in your sociology class, they have a particular college, can't remember which one it is, where they went ahead and they put all the sidewalks in. And then they brought the students in, and the students made paths and never walked through those particular sidewalks. So they had grass patches all through where they needed to go. And my concern is that if we have a lot of weight coming from the education staff and those groups, we don't have the same input coming from the parents and even from the students who are older and able to say, hey, this stuff just doesn't work for me. So I just really wanted to push that, trying to seek out as much information from all sides could provide you with some information that maybe wouldn't come up otherwise.
No, note taken.
Thank you. Is there anything else anyone wants to?
I mean,
Sure.
since this is rolling out over the year, I mean, having a update at this monthly CR
Remember, it's
meeting.
a 3-year plan, not a year.
Right, okay. Well, but I'm just saying, since we're right in the middle of this rolling out this year, just for us to stay on top of, like, where are you at as we go through the year? A brief, just a brief update might be helpful. And I share, your concern that, that this be, that all, that enough input gets considered to ensure that this is comprehensive. And I guess what I've seen through the years is that parents often depend on educators to tell them what the options are. And as long as the educators are telling them what the options are, the full range of them, then they know what is even possible. But when that range gets limited, then parents just, like people that go to the doctor and they just follow whatever the doctor says. It's the same kind of principle. People like to assume that the teachers know what to do. So just encouraging in whatever ways we can, especially in those early grades, that is just so impactful when things get limited early on. So that would be my particular focus on this, is with elementary school and making sure that the doors are not closed before they need to be closed.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then what I'm sort of envisioning is like, next meeting, we'll be talking about assistive technology. If there's any piece of this that relates to assistive technology, then we would talk about that more specifically. And then when we get to paraprofessionals, we'll have a much more specific conversation around that to give you more input on those specific issues. But yeah, having an update of how it's going, what you're learning, I think would be really, really helpful.
And that, I meant to ask before, that definition you read about inclusion, is that something that has been adopted, or can you share that with us? And will that, as that definition, I think you said maybe there's gonna be a countywide, definition of what inclusion means or something.
Revision of it.
Whenever that gets rolled out, certainly we'd like to, be
Well,
part of that if possible.
And I think it's important to kind of look at the difference between inclusion and inclusive practices. Like, inclusion is where we're going and the outcome. Inclusive practices are how you make sure that we can get there and that we can get there in a way that's sustainable. And, obviously, inclusion where you throw a kid in a gen ed classroom with no supports and no modifications isn't gonna do anybody any good, but technically it would be inclusion.
Inclusion is a location, inclusive practices is a methodology in which the child has access to whatever they need.
Right, I mean, I think that makes sense. I guess personally, I wouldn't say inclusion is a location, because I think it's a mindset and it's a lot of other things. It is confusing because the federal law definition of the word inclusion does not appear in the federal law. All you have is to work with is least restrictive environment, and then all the principles that come in the rest of the law. So I think, just a little bit of education around that, I think that's something that general educators who haven't had, spent any time with that law, they get it when they're doing the VAP tool, but other than that, just kind of helping people understand how that all fits together.
And could I add one thing to that?
Yes.
I feel like there's so much pressure on educators to be able to know everything, to have an answer. And I think that they should really be given that support, that you don't have to, it's not expected, and please come to us, for that support. Because if we're bringing in and really bringing in inclusion as a way of life in our school system, we've got to work as a huge team. We've got to all work together. That's how it works. So
I agree.
thank you for that.
None of us were born knowing how to raise kids with disabilities either. Okay.
I always think I know more than I do, and then I realize, oh, no, I don't.
All right. Wow. Our next meeting is November 14th, and somehow we cut off a whole bunch of other meetings. So,
Now we're jumping to April.
yeah, so I guess we're just going to eliminate the rest of the year. So I'll put those back in so that we have,
The dates
we
are
have all
on
of
your-
ours.
On your brochure, if you'd like to check.
Yes, they are, as soon as you get your
Yeah.
your correct brochure. But we've always put the dates on here, and I'll get it back on. Member roundtable. So this is the time where we go around and just, for the good of the order, anything that you'd like to share, or any issues that you would like to raise for us to put on a future agenda. Do you want to go ahead and go first?
Come back.
Yes.
My thoughts on
I'll start down here. Ms. Gunn, is there anything you'd like us to put on our agenda? Okay. Ms. Hazelhurst, what's going
I don't
on?
have a lot to share. I know we, I think special education teachers and supervisors across the county are working really hard. We're looking at the VAP decision-making tool, and just your point, what you were saying earlier, I do think that I can speak for my team and the people that I, collaborate, most closely with. We do feel very supported, and our admin and our supervisors, guiding us through that. And I say all the time, every day, let me check on that, and have to reach out to somebody. So sometimes that's a parent, because they know their kid best. Sometimes that's a supervisor or, their teacher in the building. So I do think that, can't speak for everybody, but the folks that I know and that I work with, we all do feel comfortable in reaching out to our instructional supervisors, whether that be special education or otherwise, different content area. Because sometimes I don't need Dr. Bodwin, I need, Angie Ashley, or Ms. Bodie from Language Arts, so.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah, so
that it's
that's all-
that
that's all I
kind of
have.
Conversation. Thank you.
That is,
All right, Anna. what's your-
I do not have anything else. to
Nothing,
add.
hon. I want to share, Ashley Menwer could not be here tonight, and she had asked, she contacted me before the meeting because she had a concern that she wanted to share during the roundtable, and she asked me if I would share it this evening, and this is something that we can put on a future agenda, but I just want to share what the concern is. School board policy states that parents must give 2 days' notice, or may be required to give 2 days' notice to observe their student in class. That policy also states that approval for IEE observations has to be given by the special education office. IEEs are the independent educational evaluations if someone has an evaluation and then wants a second opinion, basically. The special education department form, though, says that includes parents on the list of those that need to have that form signed and get approval to observe in a special education class, where we're not aware of a similar form, or at least the use of a similar form for parents who just want to observe their kids in a general education class or visit a general education class.
Yep.
So,
I had to get permission from the principal of the school.
did you have to complete a
And it
form?
wasn't for my personal observation, but to get someone to come in or
That's
to.
that's a separate, we're talking about just parent, I'm just
Oh.
talking about a parent. So,
They're allowed to come in and observe.
well, okay, so the issue is that if a parent is going to observe in a general education class, they go to the principal. If they're going to observe in a special education class, they go to the special education department, but then they have to. That is incorrect? Okay. Because on the form that was forwarded to me, it did say parent or other observer as the person who had to fill out the form.
Correct. Whoever's
Oh,
doing the
yeah.
observation fills out the form.
Mhm.
That form goes to the building administrator. The collaboration is between the building administrator and the parent or the observer.
So it's the principal.
But her point was that in a special education class, a parent has to fill out a form.
It wouldn't
To
matter
s-
whether
to
you're
observe-
gen ed or special education.
But that form it says Office of Special Education on top. What she's saying is that that's not the case for students in gen ed. They're not filling out a form.
But they are.
They are for them, as a
Yes, they would.
parent, to go into a
They
class.
would have
The
to.
administrator has to know who's in their building and the purpose of that. The purpose is really to have documentation
They-
that they requested an observation. So
They can actually even decline it, can't they? They can say we
could,
would.
but under best practice, we would not do that.
So if
It's
it's,
happened.
So it's the same form.
so
you're
the,
saying,
but the
not
policy,
random.
okay, so the school board policy says that the special education office, because I read the school board, I just want to make sure I'm understanding it clearly. The school board policy says that you go to the principal unless it's for an IEE. That's what the
But
school board.
an IEE is an independent educational evaluation that has been requested through the special
Understand.
education.
No, that
office.
makes perfect sense to me. The point is, it says everybody else is supposed to go to the principal. What she's saying is, as a parent of a student in a self-contained special education class, she's being told she has to go to the special education department for permission and
So
fill
maybe
out a
it's
form.
Use the
Because,
elevation.
I had the,
Is it a
I
communication?
was looking at the form, and the form says for a parent or another observer to observe the class. So there's a form, if a parent wants to see their kid in the class, they have to fill out the special education form. At least that's what it says. Ugh.
I know.
It's mock.
So the
But-
form comes
Mm.
out of the special education office if they're looking to observe a special education classroom. That is as far as it goes in our office. The form is given to the principal, and that is where everything is set up. The form just came out of our office. There's no, anyone in our office has to approve it or anything like that. The form was created out of our office, goes to the parent, it's given to the principal. We are out of it unless we're asked to do the observation along with the parent.
Okay, and I guess her objection was that as a parent, she felt that she had to jump through another hoop.
The question is.
because her child was
the
in a
question
special
is,
education
why is
class.
there a different form for a special ed classroom
I
than a
can't
general?
answer that, I
Okay,
can look
that's-
into that, I don't know what was
Yeah.
created for Gen Ed, I'm
Right.
not sure.
Right.
This is a form that was used prior to me becoming the director,
Okay,
and so
Right,
when
that-
that
and
was
that's what I'm trying-
requested, then that's the direction we went in. I can look into
Okay.
that further, but that's where we've been in the past, and so that's the direction I went in at this time.
Which makes perfect sense. It looks to me, just reading the school board policy, like that form maybe should only apply to IEEs and not to parents. But again, that was just my read of the school board policy, so that may be something, if you could look at that and just let us know in your report next time what the deal is, that would be fantastic. And that is all I have.
all right, if you'd
So-
like to do something fun
Oh, yeah, fun, come spend your money.
for a good cause, come out to the Arctober Craft Fair. The Arc of North Central Virginia is hosting our annual craft fair, and I also have our new brochure. It's slightly updated, you might not notice too many changes, but there's a few. But next Saturday, October 19th, 10 to 2, at Lockyer Bay.
In the cafeteria.
In the cafeteria.
actually have it, at my house.
And there's free stuff for kids to do, so
Fun day.
you can dump them at the craft table and go shopping.
Yes.
All right, is there anything else other than that everybody needs to get rid of their brochure? Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I was coming back to you. You sure? Positive? Okay. Would you like to make a motion to adjourn? Marilyn? Would you like to say- All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you all. Thank you all for coming.